The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a massive dome under the artificial stars. Hundreds of different alien species filled the seats, their strange voices creating a low buzz that echoed off the walls. At the center of it, all sat 3 humans at a small table, looking very ordinary compared to the bizarre creatures around them. Ambassador Lisa Grant smoothed her dark blue uniform and checked her notes one more time. She had been preparing for this meeting for months. Next to her, Captain Jake Morrison sat perfectly still in his military dress uniform, his hands folded on the table. On her other side, Dr. Amy Sullivan tapped quietly on her tablet, recording everything she saw. The humans were here because of a problem, a big problem. The Vorthic Consortium wanted to take away 3 human colonies in the Kepler 442 star system. These colonies had been there for 10 years. Thousands of human families lived there. They had built homes, farms, and schools. They had made a life among the stars. But the Vorthic said the system belonged to them. They had old maps, they claimed. Maps that were made before humans ever left Earth. Maps that proved they owned that space. War Speaker Grath stood at the Vorthic table across the room. He was huge, even for his species. 4 thick arms crossed over his chest, each hand marked, with deep scars from old battles. His red eyes glowed as he stared at the humans. To him, they looked weak and soft. Just 3 small people in a room full of warriors and giants. The council chairman called the meeting to order. Valak was from the hegemony, a species that looked like tall, thin trees with glowing bark. His voice was calm and deep. We are here to discuss the territorial dispute over the Kepler 442 system. The human delegation will present their case. First, Lisa Grant stood up slowly. She was not tall, but she carried herself with quiet confidence. When she spoke, her voice was clear and polite. Honored council members, thank you for hearing our case today. Humanity has always respected the laws and customs of this great council. We come here seeking fairness and justice. She pressed a button on her tablet. The air above the center of the room filled with a 3-dimensional map of the Kepler 442 system. 3 planets glowed softly, showing where the human colonies were. Located 10 years ago, human explorers found this system, Lisa continued. It was empty. No signs of life. No claims on file with the council. We followed all proper procedures. We filed the correct paperwork. We paid all the required fees. We built our colonies according to council safety rules. The map changed, showing pictures of the human settlements. There were farms with green crops growing under alien suns. Schools where human children learned alongside young aliens from other peaceful species. Medical centers that helped anyone who needed care, regardless of what planet they came from. These are not military bases, Lisa said. These are homes. Families live here. Children play in the streets. Doctors save lives. Teachers help young minds grow. These people have done nothing wrong. They have broken no laws. They have hurt no one. Some of the council members nodded. The Ilari delegation, who looked like living crystals, seemed especially interested. They were known for being peaceful and fair. The insect-like Kithara also appeared to be listening carefully. Lessa continued presenting evidence. She showed documents proving when humans first found the system. She showed council records of their proper filing. She showed communication logs, proving they had checked for any existing claims before settling there. Every piece of evidence was organized perfectly. Every argument was logical and clear. Lisa spoke like a lawyer and a diplomat combined. She never raised her voice. She never showed anger. She treated everyone in the room with respect, even though some of them clearly didn't like humans. War Speaker Groth listened to all of this with growing disgust. When Lisa finished her presentation, He stood up to his full height. He was nearly 8 feet tall, and his forearms made him look even more threatening. "Lies," he said, his voice like grinding stone. "Soft-flesh humans think they can hide behind papers and words. But strength is what matters in the galaxy. The strong take what they want. The weak lose what they cannot protect." He gestured with all 4 arms, and his own map appeared in the awe. Air. This one showed old star charts covered in symbols that most species couldn't read. "These charts are 500 years old," Graf said. "They show Vorthik claims to this system from before humans even knew how to fly between stars. Your people were still crawling around on one little planet when my ancestors mapped this space." Lisa waited patiently for him to finish. When he was done, she stood again. "Honored War Speaker, those charts are indeed old, but they were never filed with the Council. They were never made public. Under Council law, claims must be registered and maintained. A species cannot simply appear after others have settled and lived somewhere for years, claiming ancient rights. Council law," Grath spat, "made by weaklings who fear true strength. The Vorthik have conquered 17 star systems. We have fleets that could destroy entire worlds. What do humans have? What strength have you ever shown?" Captain Morrison shifted slightly in his chair. It was a tiny movement, but Dr. Sullivan noticed it. She knew Jake well enough to recognize that small sign of tension. Lisa's smile never wavered. "We have shown our strength through peaceful cooperation. We have built instead of destroyed. We have helped instead of harmed. We believe that true strength comes from protecting the weak, not crushing them." Graf laughed, a harsh sound that made several smaller species flinch. "Protecting the weak? You are the weak. You have been in this galaxy for barely 20 years. You have no great fleets. You have won no battles. You hide behind diplomacy because you cannot fight." The War Speaker walked closer to the human table. His heavy footsteps echoed through the chamber. "I have seen your ships, small, slow, built for carrying supplies, not for war. I have studied your colonies. No weapons, no defenses. Just farmers and teachers and doctors, like you said." He leaned down, bringing his scarred face close to Lisa's. "What will you do when Vorthik battle fleets arrive at your precious colonies? Will you file paperwork at them? Will you make speeches? Will you ask them nicely to go away?" Lisa looked up at him without flinching. Her voice remained calm and polite. "We will do what we have always done, War Speaker. We will protect our people." "With what army?" Grath demanded. "With what weapons? You have nothing that can stand against Vorthik might." Captain Norrison finally spoke. His voice was quiet but clear. "We have enough." Grath turned to look at the human military officer. Morrison was smaller than the War Speaker, but he sat straight and met the alien's glowing red eyes without fear. There was something in his expression that made Grath pause for just a moment, but the moment passed quickly. Grath straightened up and addressed the entire council. "The Vorthik Consortium claims the Kepler 442 system by right of ancient discovery and right of strength. These humans squat on our territory like parasites. They will leave or they will be removed." Chairman Vilak's bark-like skin flickered with concern. "War Speaker, the Council does not recognize claims of strength over properly filed territorial rights. The humans have followed all procedures." "Then the Council is weak, like the humans," Grath replied. "The Vorthik do not need Council permission to take what is ours." A murmur of alarm went through the chamber. Several species began talking at once. The idea of ignoring Council authority was shocking to most of them. Lisa Grant stood again. She waited for the noise to die down before speaking. "The human delegation requests a recess for the Council to consider all evidence presented today. We trust in the wisdom and fairness of this body to make a just decision." As the council members began filing out for their break, Lisa gathered her papers calmly. Captain Morrison and Dr. Sullivan followed her lead, packing up their materials, without any sign of panic or fear. But as they prepared to leave, Lisa did something strange. Her left hand tapped against her tablet in a specific pattern. 3 short taps, 2 long ones, then 3 short again. It looked like nervous fidgeting to most observers. Captain Morrison saw it, though. His eyes widened slightly, and he gave a barely visible nod. Dr. Sullivan noticed the exchange, but didn't understand what it meant. The pattern Lisa had tapped was an old Earth signal. It was simple but important. It meant that talking was over. It meant that other options were now on the table dot. As the humans left the Great Hall, War Speaker Grath watched them go. To him, they still looked like weak, soft creatures who would break easily when real force was applied. He had no idea that he had just made the biggest mistake of his very long life. 3 days passed quietly in the council stations. The Great Hall remained empty while the council members met in smaller groups, discussing the human and Vorthic claims. Most delegates expected the talks to continue for weeks. Territorial disputes usually took a long time to resolve. Dr. Amy Sullivan spent her time in the station's library, reading about Vorthic culture and history. What she found made her uncomfortable. The Vorthic had a simple rule: might makes right. They had conquered 17 different star systems over the past 2 centuries. Each time, they had given their targets a choice: surrender or die. Captain Jake Morrison used the time differently. He sent encrypted messages back to Earth using the station's communication array. To anyone watching, they looked like routine reports to his superiors. But the messages contained coded information that would be very important soon. Ambassador Lisa Grant met with other delegations, maintaining the friendly relationships that humans had built over their 20 years in galactic politics. She had coffee with the Ilari crystals, shared meals with the peaceful hegemony representatives, and even played games with the young Kithara diplomats. Everyone who spoke with her came away with the same impression. Humans were genuinely nice people who wanted everyone to get along. Lisa never mentioned the dispute directly, but she listened carefully when other species talked about their own problems with Vorthic aggression. On the morning of the 4th day, everything changed. War Speaker Grath requested an emergency council session. When the delegates gathered in the Great Hall, they found him standing at the center podium instead of at his usual table. His forearms were spread wide, and his red eyes glowed brighter than usual. Honored council members, he began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. The Vorthic Consortium has grown tired of waiting for justice. We have decided to take direct action. A worried murmur spread through the assembled delegates. Direct action from the Vorthic usually meant violence. Chairman Vilak's bark-like skin darkened with concern. War Speaker, the Council has not yet reached a decision on your territorial claim. Surely you can wait a few more days for our deliberation? Grath's laugh was harsh and cold. The time for deliberation has ended. At this moment, a Vorthic battle fleet is traveling toward the Kepler 442 system. They will arrive in 72 hours. When they get there, they will remove the human infestation from our rightful territory. The hall erupted in shocked voices. Several smaller species cried out in alarm. The insect-like Kithara began clicking rapidly in their own language, which usually meant they were very upset. This is against all council protocols, Chairman Velek said, his usually calm voice showing strain. You cannot simply attack a settled system without what? Grath interrupted. Without permission from a council that talks endlessly, but does nothing? The Vorthic have heard enough words. Now we will show the galaxy what real strength looks like. He turned to look directly at the human delegation. Lisa Grant sat calmly at her table, her hands folded. Captain Morrison remained perfectly still. Dr. Sullivan had stopped writing on her tablet and was watching Grath carefully. "Soft-flesh humans," Grath said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You have 72 hours to evacuate your illegal colonies. Take your farmers and teachers and doctors and run back to your little Earth. If any humans remain in the Kepler 442 system when our fleet arrives, they will be considered enemy combatants and dealt with accordingly." The threat was clear. Any humans who stayed would be killed. Several council members began talking at once, demanding that Grath withdraw his threat. The Ilari delegation stood up, their crystal bodies ringing like bells in protest. Even some of the usually neutral species seemed angry about the Vorthic ultimatum. Through all the noise and chaos, Lisa Grant sat quietly. She looked like she was thinking carefully about something important. Finally, she stood up and raised her hand for attention. The hall gradually grew quiet. Everyone wanted to hear how the humans would respond to such a direct threat. "Thank you, Chairman Velik," Lisa said in her usual polite voice. "The human delegation has heard War Speaker Grath's statement. We appreciate the Council's concern and support during these difficult discussions." She paused and looked around the room, making eye contact with delegates from dozens of different species. "However," she continued, "humanity has decided to withdraw our petition for Council mediation. We will handle this matter through our own channels." A shocked silence fell over the chamber. No one had expected that response. Most species facing a Vorthic ultimatum either surrendered immediately or begged the Council for protection. Chairman Velik leaned forward in his seat. "Ambassador Grant, are you certain? The Council still has time to find a peaceful solution. We have not yet exhausted all diplomatic options." Lisa's smile was warm and genuine. "We are grateful for the Council's willingness to help, truly. But the Vorthic Consortium has made their position very clear. They prefer direct action to diplomacy. We respect their choice." War Speaker Grath frowned. The human response wasn't what he had expected either. Where was the panic? Where were the desperate pleas for help? Where was the fear? Captain Morrison stood up beside his ambassador. When he spoke, his voice carried the crisp authority of a military officer. "War Speaker Grath," he said formally, "the Earth Defense Command has authorized me to deliver an official response to your ultimatum." Morrison's posture was perfect, his uniform spotless. He looked like a soldier giving a report to his superior officers. But there was something in his eyes that made several council members pay closer attention. "Any hostile action against human civilian populations will be met with an appropriate response," Morrison continued. "We strongly encourage the Vorthic Consortium to reconsider their current course of action." Grath stared at the human captain for a long moment. Then he threw back his head and laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber like breaking stone. "Appropriate response?" Grath said when he stopped laughing. "What response can you make? Your entire species has maybe a dozen warships. Old, slow vessels designed for exploration, not combat. My battle fleet alone contains 12 heavy cruisers, each one larger and more powerful than your biggest ship." He walked closer to the human table, his heavy footsteps making the floor vibrate. "I have studied your military, Captain Morrison. You have no weapons that can penetrate Vorthic armor. You have no shields that can stop Vorthic plasma cannons. You have no experience fighting real warriors." Morrison listened without changing expression. When Grath finished speaking, the captain nodded politely. "Thank you for that assessment, War Speaker. I will make sure it is included in my report." The calm response seemed to frustrate Grath even more. He had expected fear, anger, or at least some sign that his threats were working. Dr. Sullivan finally looked up from her tablet. She had been taking notes throughout the entire exchange, recording everything for later analysis. "War Speaker," she said in her academic voice, May I ask a question about Vorthic military doctrine? Grath turned to look at the human scientist. What do you want to know, Softflesh? In your conquests of those 17 star systems, how many of those civilizations actually fought back? The question seemed odd to most of the council members. What did it matter whether the Vorthics victims had resisted? Grath's chest swelled with pride. All of them fought. None were wise enough to surrender peacefully. Each one thought they could stand against Vorthic might. Each one learned better before they died. Dr. Sullivan nodded and made a note on her tablet. I see. And in those battles, did you ever face an opponent who was actually stronger than your forces? Impossible, Grath snorted. The Vorthic are the strongest warriors in the galaxy. No species can match our weapons, our ships, or our courage in battle. Amy Sullivan looked up from her tablet and smiled. It was a small, gentle smile, the kind a teacher might give to a student who had just said something very innocent. That must be comforting, she said softly. Something about her tone made several council members feel uneasy, though they couldn't say why. Ambassador Grant gathered her papers and stood to leave. Chairman Valak, the human delegation thanks the council for their time and consideration. We will be departing the station within the hour to return to Earth. Ambassador, Chairman Valak said urgently, surely you can reconsider. The council has influence with many species. Perhaps we can negotiate a compromise that Lisa held up her hand gently. Mr. Chairman, we have the greatest respect for this council and its wisdom. But the Vorthic Consortium has made a choice. They have chosen to resolve this dispute through force rather than diplomacy. She looked directly at War Speaker Grath. Her expression was still polite and friendly, but something in her eyes had changed. Humanity has always preferred peaceful solutions to our problems, she said. We believe that civilized beings should talk through their disagreements. We think that violence should always be the last option, used only when every other choice has been taken away. She paused, and the chamber fell completely silent. The Vorthic have now taken away every other choice. As the humans prepared to leave, War Speaker Graf called out one final taunt. Run back to your Earth, soft-flesh humans. Tell your leaders that the Vorthic Consortium does not make empty threats. In 70T, 48 hours after the humans left the council station, Chairman Vilek called an emergency session. The great hall filled quickly as delegates hurried to their seats. Everyone wanted to know what was happening in the Kepler 442 system. The Vorthic delegation looked confident. War Speaker Grath sat at his table with his 4 arms crossed, waiting for news of his fleet's victory. He had received reports that his ships had entered the target system right on schedule. Soon, he expected to hear that the human colonies had been destroyed and the system was under Vorthic control. At the center of the chamber, the main display screen flickered to life. Sensor operator Theises of the monitoring corps stood beside it, her pale blue skin showing signs of stress. The monitoring corps was supposed to be neutral, watching galactic events without taking sides. Honored council members, Theises began, her voice carefully controlled. Long-range sensors have confirmed that the Vorthic battle fleet entered the Kepler 442 system approximately 6 hours ago. 12 heavy cruisers and their support vessels took up positions around the 3 human colony worlds. War Speaker Grath leaned forward in his seat. This was the moment he had been waiting for. However, Theises continued, new developments have occurred that require immediate council attention. The main screen changed to show a real-time sensor display of the Kepler 442 system. 12 red dots marked the positions of the Vorthic ships. 3 blue dots showed the human colony worlds. But there were also 3 new contacts that made several. Council members gasped in surprise. 3 green dots had appeared in the system, moving in perfect formation toward the Vorthic fleet. Unknown vessels have entered the system, Dizes reported. Energy signatures indicate they are of human origin, but they do not match any known human ship classifications in our database. War Speaker Grath stood up quickly. Impossible. Humans do not have warships capable of challenging a Vorthik battle fleet. Show me visual confirmation. Dizes manipulated her controls, and the screen changed to show actual images from the system. What appeared made the entire council fall silent. 3. Massive ships moved through space with predatory grace. Each one was easily 3 times larger than the biggest Vorthik cruiser. Their hulls were dark gray, almost black, with angular designs that looked nothing like the smooth, peaceful curves of human diplomatic vessels. These ships looked like they had been built for one purpose only: destroying other ships. Dr. Keth, the insect-like council recorder, made rapid clicking sounds that indicated extreme surprise. Those vessel configurations do not appear in any human fleet registry submitted to the council. The ships bore names painted in white letters along their hulls: U's Defiance, UES Retribution, and UES Judgment. The names alone sent a chill through many of the council members. Suddenly, a new voice crackled through the communication array. It was human, but it sounded nothing like the polite diplomatic tones the council had grown used to. Vorthik vessels, this is Admiral Ryan Cole of the Human Defense Perimeter Fleet. You are in violation of human territorial space and have threatened civilian populations. You have 60 seconds to begin immediate withdrawal, or we will interpret your continued presence as an act of war. The voice was cold, professional, and carried the kind of authority that came from someone who had ended civilizations before. Several smaller species in the council chamber began fidgeting nervously in their seats. War Speaker Grath activated his own communication system. Human Admiral, I am War Speaker Grath of the Vorthik Consortium. This system belongs to the Vorthik. By ancient right, your illegal colonies will be destroyed, and your ships will be captured or destroyed. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Admiral Cole's response came immediately. War Speaker Grath, you were warned. 60 seconds have elapsed. All Vorthik vessels are now designated as hostile targets. You may surrender at any time before weapons range is achieved. The Vorthik fleet began moving into attack formation. Their heavy cruisers were indeed impressive ships, bristling with plasma cannons and protected by energy shields that could deflect most known weapons. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a city, but as they approached the 3 human vessels, something became very clear to everyone watching. The human ships weren't running away. They weren't calling for help. They weren't even trying to avoid the fight. They were waiting. Chairman Valak's bark-like skin had turned completely dark with worry. Sensor Operator Dizes, are you able to determine the weapon capabilities of the human vessels? Dizes worked at her controls for several seconds before answering. Mr. Chairman, I am detecting energy readings that are ... unprecedented. The power output from each human ship exceeds our measurement capabilities. War Speaker Grath laughed harshly. More human tricks and deceptions. No ship can generate that much power. Their sensors must be malfunctioning. On the display screen, the Vorthik fleet continued its approach. War Speaker Grath's flagship, the Crushing Fist, led the formation with its plasma cannons already charging for battle. Admiral Cole's voice returned to the communication channel. All human vessels, you are authorized to engage hostile targets. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. Show them what happens when someone threatens our people. The response came from the 3 human ships in voices just as cold and professional as their admirals. U-East Defiance, acknowledged. Engaging. U-East Retribution, acknowledged. Weapons hot. U-East Judgment, acknowledged. Time to work. What happened? Next redefined every council member's understanding of warfare. The 3 human ships didn't fire conventional weapons. They didn't launch missiles or shoot plasma beams. Instead, they emitted focused energy streams that looked like solid bars of white light. When those beams touched the Vorthic ships, the cruisers didn't just explode. They didn't just break apart. They simply ceased to exist. The first beam struck, the crushing fist dead center. For a split second, the massive warship glowed like a small sun. Then it was gone, leaving only empty space where 12,000 tons of metal and weapons had been moments before. The second and third beams reached their targets at exactly the same time. 2 more Vorthic cruisers vanished instantly, their crews having no time to even send distress signals. The remaining 9 Vorthic ships broke formation and scattered, trying desperately to escape. But the human vessels moved with impossible precision, their weapons tracking every target with deadly accuracy. In the council chamber, several delegates had started making distressed noises in their own languages. The Ilari crystals were ringing like broken bells. The Kithara were clicking so rapidly it sounded like machine gun fire. War Speaker Grath stared at the screen in shock. This is impossible. No weapon can destroy a heavy cruiser in a single shot. Our armor can withstand anything in the galaxy. Dr. Keth had stopped taking notes and was simply watching the screen with her compound eyes wide. It appears that the human weapons are operating on principles unknown to Council science. Another Vorthic cruiser vanished in a flash of white light. Then another. The human ships weren't even breathing hard. They moved through space like hunters who had done this many times before. Sensor operator Dizes checked her readings 3 times before reporting what she saw. Council members, the engagement has lasted exactly 4 minutes and 17 seconds. 11 Vorthic vessels have been ... eliminated. 1 Vorthic ship appears to have suffered critical damage, but remains partially intact. The last Vorthic cruiser was spinning helplessly in space, its engines dead and its weapons destroyed. Emergency pods began launching from its hull as the crew abandoned ship. Admiral Cole's voice returned to the communication array, but now he was addressing the Council directly. Council Chairman Velek, this is Admiral Cole. We are transmitting full tactical recordings of this engagement for your review. The Vorthic fleet was given multiple opportunities to withdraw and chose combat instead. We have rescued all surviving Vorthic personnel and will transfer them to Council custody. Chairman Velek tried to speak, but found his voice wasn't working properly. It took him several seconds to form words. Admiral Cole, this is Chairman Velek. We ... We received your transmission. The Council will review the tactical data immediately. Acknowledged, Mr. Chairman. Please note that the 3 human colony worlds were never in any danger. Our defensive perimeter has been monitoring this system since the first human settlers arrived 10 years ago. We simply chose not to make our presence known until it became necessary. The implications of that statement hit the Council like a physical blow. The humans had been watching the system all along. They had known about the Vorthic threat before it even developed. They had ships and weapons that could destroy entire fleets, but they had chosen to try diplomacy first. Dr. Keth found her voice. First, Admiral, if I may ask, how long has humanity possessed this level of military capability? Admiral Cole was quiet for a moment before answering. Dr. Keth, humans have been preparing for the worst-case scenario since we first left our home planet. We have always hoped for the best while planning for the worst. Today, the Vorthic Consortium forced us to implement one of our worst-case plans. War Speaker Grath finally managed to speak, though his voice shook with emotions he had never felt before. How? How did you hide ships like this? How did you develop weapons that can destroy anything? War SP. The Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as delegates gathered for the emergency session. Word of the Kepler 442 incident had spread throughout the station, and species representatives, who rarely attended meetings, had come to witness the discussion. Everyone wanted to understand what had really happened when the humans revealed their true military capabilities. Chairman Vilak stood at the central podium, his bark-like skin still showing signs of stress from the previous day's revelations. In his hands, he held a data pad containing the tactical recordings from the battle. The information on that pad would change galactic politics forever. Honored council members, Vilak began, his voice carrying across the chamber. We have completed our initial analysis of the Kepler 442 engagement. The findings are ... significant. The main display screen activated, showing a technical breakdown of the battle. Numbers and charts filled the air above the assembled delegates, but the raw data was almost impossible to believe. Dr. Keth, the insect-like recorder, stood to present the findings. Her compound eyes reflected the light from the display as she began to read from her notes. The engagement lasted 4 minutes and 17 seconds. 12 Vorthic heavy cruisers, each massing approximately 15,000 tons, and armed with plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes, were eliminated by 3 human vessels. Total Vorthic casualties, 47,000 personnel. Total human casualties, 0. A shocked murmur ran through the chamber. Several smaller species made distressed sounds in their native languages. The human weapons appear to operate on principles unknown to current galactic science, Dr. Keth continued. Each energy discharge completely disintegrated the target vessel. At a molecular level, no debris larger than microscopic particles remained. The precision was surgical. Nearby asteroids and space debris were completely unaffected. War Speaker Groth sat in the Vorthic section, his usually proud posture now slumped with defeat. One of his 4 arms was in a medical brace. He had been injured when his escape pod was recovered from the battle site. The psychological damage was clearly much worse than the physical wounds. The human vessels demonstrated capabilities that exceed our current understanding of physics. Dr. Keth went on. Power generation levels were off our measurement scales. Targeting systems achieved perfect accuracy at ranges that should have been impossible. Most disturbing of all, the human ships showed no signs of strain or overheating despite the massive energy expenditure. Chairman Velek gestured for attention. Dr. Keth, please explain what this means in practical terms for the Council. The insect-like scientist clicked her mandibles nervously. Mr. Chairman, it means that everything we thought we knew about military power in this galaxy was wrong. The humans possess technology that is centuries ahead of anything in our databases. If they wanted to, they could conquer every system in Council space within a matter of weeks. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. The implications were staggering. For 20 years, the Council had seen humans as helpful but weak newcomers to galactic politics. Now they were learning that those same humans could destroy entire civilizations without breaking a sweat. Senator Corval of the hegemony species raised a trembling branch-like arm. Dr. Keth, based on your analysis, how many of these human warships might exist? Dr. Keth consulted her datapad. That is unknown, Senator. However, Admiral Cole referred to his forces as the Defense Perimeter Fleet, which implies the existence of additional fleets with different purposes. The 3 ships we observed could be either the entirety of human military power or merely a small sample of it. The thought that there might be hundreds or thousands of ships, like the Defiance, Retribution, and Judgment, terrified most of the Council members. Species that had felt secure in their own military strength suddenly felt very vulnerable. Delegate Theises of the monitoring corps stepped forward. Council members, I have received additional information that may be relevant to our discussion. Following the battle, my corps conducted a detailed scan of the Kepler 442 system. We discovered evidence of extensive defensive installations throughout the system, installations that were completely hidden from our sensors until the humans chose to reveal them. The display screen changed to show a new star chart. The 3 colony worlds were there, just as before. But now the system was revealed to be filled with defensive platforms, early warning sensors, and what appeared to be automated weapon systems. The humans have been fortifying this system for the entire 10 years they have controlled it, Isis continued. The defensive network is so advanced that it was invisible to our best scanning technology. We only detected it because the humans began broadcasting identification signals after the battle ended. War Speaker Graf finally found his voice. It was much quieter than his usual booming tone. They were never defenseless. The colonies, the farmers, the teachers and doctors, they were protected all along. We never had any chance of succeeding. Doctor. Amy Sullivan's voice suddenly filled the chamber through the communication array. The human scientist was speaking from Earth, but her words reached every delegate clearly. Council members, this is Dr. Amy Sullivan. I have been authorized by the Earth government to provide clarification on recent events. Chairman Velik leaned forward. Dr. Sullivan, please proceed. The Council has many questions about human military capabilities. Amy's voice was calm and academic, the same tone she had used during the original dispute hearings. I want to address some misconceptions that may have developed about humanity's approach to galactic relations. Our military capabilities are not new. We have possessed advanced defensive technology since before we joined the Council 20 years ago. A revelation sent another shock through the assembly. The humans had been hiding their true strength from the very beginning of their relationship with the galactic community. Our government made a conscious decision to present ourselves as a peaceful species interested in diplomacy and cooperation, Amy continued. This was not deception. It was an accurate representation of our preferences. We genuinely prefer peaceful solutions to conflicts. Senator Corville's voice shook as he asked, Dr. Sullivan, if humans possessed such advanced weapons 20 years ago, why did you choose to appear weak? Why did you not simply take what you wanted through force? Amy was quiet for a moment before answering. Senator, that question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding about human nature. We did not appear weak because we are weak. We appeared peaceful because we are strong enough to choose peace. She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. Humanity learned something important during our early history on Earth. Most successful civilizations were not those that conquered others through force. They were the civilizations that built alliances, encouraged trade, and created stability. Violence is easy. Any species can destroy. Building something worthwhile takes real strength. Dr. Keth clicked her mandibles in confusion. But Dr. Sullivan, if humans prefer peace, why do you possess such devastating military capabilities? Because, Amy replied simply, peace is only possible when you have the strength to defend it. A species that cannot protect itself will eventually be conquered by someone who can. We choose diplomacy from a position of strength, not from weakness. The communication array crackled as another voice joined the conversation. It was Admiral Ryan Cole, a human military officer who had commanded the battle fleet. Council members, this is Admiral Cole. I want to address War Speaker Grath directly, if I may. Grath straightened slightly in his seat. I am listening, Admiral. War Speaker, you asked yesterday how humans developed our military technology. The answer is simple. We had to. Earth is a dangerous planet. For millions of years, our species survived by becoming very good at fighting each other, our environment, and extinction itself. Cole's voice carried the weight of long experience. We fought wars that lasted decades. We created weapons that could destroy entire continents. We came very close to wiping ourselves out completely, but we learned from those experiences. What did you learn? Grath asked quietly. We learned that the strongest warriors are not those who start fights, Cole replied. They are the ones who can end fights quickly and decisively when diplomacy fails. We learned that true strength comes from having options. The option to be peaceful and the option to be devastating when peace is not possible. The Admiral's next words would be quoted in military academies throughout the galaxy for generations to come. War Speaker, you made the mistake of thinking that courtesy equals weakness. You confused our preference for diplomacy with an inability to fight. That is a dangerous error that has destroyed many civilizations throughout history. Grath's voice was barely a whisper. How many species have made this mistake before? Very few, Cole admitted. Most species we encounter are wise enough to accept peaceful coexistence. The Vorthic Consortium is only the third group in 20 years that has forced us to demonstrate our defensive capabilities. The implications of that statement were terrifying. The humans had fought 2 other battles that the Council had never even heard about. How many other species had challenged humanity and simply disappeared without anyone knowing what happened to them? Chairman Vilak decided to ask the question that everyone was thinking. Admiral Cole, Dr. Sullivan, T. 6 months after the Kepler 442 incident, the Galactic Council looked very different. The Great Hall still had the same dome ceiling and artificial stars, but the way the delegates interacted with each other had changed completely. Ambassador Lisa Grant sat at the human delegation table, just as she had before. Her posture was still perfect, her smile still diplomatic, and her voice still measured and polite. To a casual observer, nothing had changed about human behavior at all. But every other species representative in the chamber treated her words with a level of respect that went far beyond normal diplomatic courtesy. When Lisa spoke, conversation stopped and everyone listened carefully. Today's session was about trade route regulations, a normally boring topic that usually put half the delegates to sleep. But even discussions about cargo inspection protocols were taken seriously when humans were involved. The Earth government proposes that inspection delays be limited to no more than 6 standard hours, Lisa said, reading from her prepared statement. We believe this provides adequate time for security checks while preventing unnecessary delays in commercial shipping. Several delegates nodded immediately. The Ilari crystals chimed their agreement. The insect-like Kithara clicked approvingly. Even species that normally argued about everything seemed eager to support human proposals. Chairman Velek made a note on his pad. The human proposal is noted and will be put to a vote. Are there any objections or alternate suggestions? The chamber remained quiet. No one wanted to be the species that disagreed with humanity's trade policies. Dr. Amy Sullivan sat next to Lisa, just as she had 6 months ago. She was still taking notes on her tablet, still observing everything with academic interest. But now other delegates frequently asked for her opinions on scientific matters, and her answers were treated as gospel truth. Captain Jake Morrison remained in his dress uniform at the 3rd seat. He still sat perfectly still with his hands folded, but now other species military attaches made a point of introducing themselves to him before every session. Word had spread through military circles about the human defense forces, and everyone wanted to stay on their good side. The changes weren't limited to how others treated humans. The revelation of human military capabilities had forced every species to reconsider their own positions in galactic politics. The Vorthak Consortium had undergone the most dramatic transformation. War Speaker Grath still attended council sessions, but his title had changed to Ambassador Grath. The Vorthak government had decided that their traditional military approach to diplomacy was no longer practical in a galaxy where humans existed. Grath stood to address the chamber, his 4 arms no longer crossed in aggressive display, but held at his sides in a gesture of respect. The Vorthak Consortium supports the human trade proposal, he said formally. We have reviewed the suggested inspection protocols and find them fair and reasonable. The transformation of the proud warrior species into diplomatic participants had shocked many observers. But Grath's personal experience with human military power had convinced his government that cooperation was much safer than confrontation. After the session ended, Grath approached the human delegation. His manner was cautious but respectful. "Ambassador Grant," he said with a slight bow, "I wanted to inform you that the first group of Vorthix students has arrived at the human colony in Kepler 442. They are very grateful for the opportunity to study at your agricultural university." Lisa's smile was warm and genuine. "That's wonderful news, Ambassador. Our farmers are excited to share their techniques with your people. I understand that Vorthix soil specialists have some interesting ideas about crop rotation that our colonists want to try." The conversation was friendly and focused on mutual benefit. 6 months ago, such an exchange would have been unthinkable. The Vorthik had gone from trying to destroy human colonies to sending their children to study at human schools. Dr. Keth approached the group, her compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lighting. As the Council's primary recorder, she had been studying human behavior patterns since the Kepler 442 revelation. "Dr. Sullivan," she said in her careful voice, "I have been analyzing historical human diplomatic records for my xenological research. I hope you don't mind me asking a personal question." Amy looked up from her tablet with interest. "Of course, Dr. Keth. What would you like to know?" "During the original territorial dispute, you asked War Speaker Grath whether he had ever faced an opponent stronger than his forces. At the time, it seemed like an odd question. But looking back, it appears you already knew what would happen if the Vorthik chose violence." Amy nodded slowly. "I suspected that Grath had never encountered a truly superior force. Most aggressive species haven't. They tend to pick fights they can win and avoid those they can't. But humans are different?" Dr. Keth asked. "Humans learned very early that sometimes you have to fight enemies that are stronger than you are," Amy replied. "Our planet was full of predators that could kill us easily. Our early civilizations faced natural disasters that seemed impossible to survive. We developed the ability to win against superior odds because we had to." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But we also learned that the best way to deal with a superior enemy is to become so strong that they don't want to fight you in the first place. That's why we developed our defensive capabilities, not to start fights, but to prevent them." Captain Morrison joined the conversation. "Dr. Keth, may I add something to Dr. Sullivan's explanation?" The insect scientist nodded eagerly. Military perspectives were always valuable for her research. The human defense forces operate on a principle. "That might seem contradictory to other species," Morrison said. "We prepare for the worst possible scenarios, but we hope we never have to use that preparation. Every weapon we build, every defensive system we deploy, every tactical plan we develop, we do it all with the hope that it will never be needed. That seems wasteful," Dr. Keth observed. "Why spend so much effort on capabilities you hope never to use?" Morrison's expression grew serious. "Because the cost of being unprepared when you need those capabilities is much higher than the cost of maintaining them when you don't. The Kepler 442 incident is a perfect example. If we hadn't been prepared, thousands of human civilians would have died." Ambassador Grath had been listening to the conversation with growing understanding. "Captain Morrison, is this why humans seemed so confident during the original dispute? You knew you could protect your colonies all along?" "We were confident in our ability to defend our people," Morrison confirmed. "But we genuinely hoped it wouldn't be necessary. War is expensive, both in resources and in lives. Even when you win, you lose something important." Lisa Grant gathered her papers and stood to leave. As the formal session was over, delegates began their usual informal discussions and relationship-building conversations. "Ambassador Grant," Chairman Malek called out as she passed his position. "Could I speak with you privately for a moment?" Lisa nodded and followed the tree-like hegemony leader to a quiet corner of the chamber. "Ambassador," Valek said in a low voice, "I hope you understand that the Council's attitude toward humanity has changed significantly since the Kepler 442 incident. Many species now view humans as the dominant military power in this region of the galaxy." Lisa's expression remained diplomatic but thoughtful. "Mr. Chairman, how does the Council feel about that development?" Valek's bark-like skin shifted to a darker color, indicating stress. "There is some concern about what humans might do with that power. History shows that dominant species often use their strength to expand their influence." "I understand the concern," Lisa replied, "but I think the past 6 months have shown that human behavior hasn't changed at all. We're still the same species we were before. We still want the same things: peaceful trade, cultural exchange, and cooperation on mutual challenges." "But you could take whatever you wanted," Valek pointed out. "No species in the Council could stop you if you decided to. Expand through conquest." Lisa was quiet for a moment, considering her response. When she spoke, her words would become part of official Council policy toward humanity. "Mr. Chairman, that's exactly why we don't need to take anything by force. When you're strong enough to take whatever you want, you can afford to be patient and build relationships instead. Conquered territories require constant military occupation. Willing allies provide benefits that last for generations." She paused, then added something that would be repeated in diplomatic academies throughout the galaxy. "The strongest position is one where others want to work with you because it benefits them, not because they're afraid of what happens if they don't. Fear-based relationships always collapse eventually. Trust-based relationships grow stronger over time." As they talked, other conversations were taking place throughout the chamber. Species representatives were discussing new trade agreements, research partnerships, and cultural exchange programs with human colonies. The relationships were voluntary and mutually beneficial, exactly as Lisa had described. Dr. Keth was updating her xenological files with new observations about human behavior. Her latest entry would become required reading for anyone studying galactic politics. Humans remain the most diplomatic species in the Council. This is not because they lack the capacity for vile